Tom Tugendhat has thrown his hat in the ring as a leadership candidate for the Conservative Party. And specifically, he's drawn attention to the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, and the European Court of Human Rights. And of course, the Human Rights Act, which was set up in 1998, a law that incorporates the rights contained in the European Convention on Human Rights into domestic British law, and this allows UK citizens, subjects, to seek redress in British courts for breaches of their ECHR rights rather than having to go to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. The court was something, and the Human Rights Convention was something that was set up in the 1950s by the Council of Europe, aimed at protecting human rights and fundamental freedoms in Europe, and it established the European Court of Human Rights, which oversees compliance with the convention. Individuals can bring cases against their governments if they believe their rights under the convention have been violated once they've exhausted national remedies. I must put my cards on the table. I've done that. And I took Greece to court and I won. And this was in a case about torture, and it's quite relevant because it also involves the process of pushbacks, which the Greek government is still engaged in, and which has been roundly condemned, and which the Conservative candidates seem to quite favour, and certainly the Reform members, the 5 Reform members, I use the term pointedly, are keen on. Tom Tugendhat, a former minister and the MP for Tunbridge, has announced his candidacy today following Rishi Sunak's plan to resign from after the party's defeat in the July the 4th general election. He'd previously served as the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. He was a security minister. He's presenting himself as a unifying candidate with a focus on rebuilding trust with the British people. In his campaign, Tugendhat plans to suggest that we should reconsider our relationship with the ECHR. He argues that if the ECHR's institutions impede the UK's ability to control its borders, the country should consider exempting itself from certain ECHR obligations or leaving its jurisdiction entirely. And in other words, becoming like Russia or Belarus. The stance is part of his broader common-sense conservative platform, which emphasises national sovereignty, scrutiny, and control over immigration. Tugendhat's position marks a shift from his earlier views. In 2022, he dismissed calls to leave the ECHR, but has since indicated support for opting out of specific parts of that convention, particularly those he believes overreach or undermine national security and border control. His leadership bid comes at a critical point in the Conservative Party's affairs, with internal divisions, public trust issues. His call to potentially leave the ECHR aligns with a broader Conservative agenda focused on national sovereignty and stricter immigration control. Maybe it's just a ruse to get power, in which case he's a liar as well as a turncoat. But it resonating with his party's base. Well, I'm pleased. I'm pleased to hear that he's thinking about a party's base. That's a very Trumpian concept, and maybe the Conservative Party has finally conceded that it needs to reimagine itself. I think it's unfortunate that it's reimagining itself as a British version of the Republican Party under Trump. But there we are. Whoever shouts loudest is likely to get attention. I think, should he go down this route, should the Conservatives go down this route and become Reform light, then frankly they will never be in power again, and do not deserve to be in power again. There's 5 years to wait before there's a general election, and this obsession with chipping back at our relationship with our neighbours is absurd, and getting rid of anything with the name European in it. It's like it's like trying to rename Dachshunds or the royal family during the First World War. There's an element of madness about this. The ECHR is not a European court as such. It's not a foreign court. It's a court and a convention that we were part of drawing up. It's part of our it's part of our thing. It hasn't exhausted its purpose. Its purpose is still very, very valid. Of course, we could simply do what the Greeks do, and that's ignore the rulings of the ECHR. I don't think that's particularly good either.